Hello and welcome to the Oraculos podcast. My name is Eboni Bledsoe, and I'm here to chat with Mychal A. Bryan, the founder of the Oraculos School of Astrology. Hello,
Hey, Ebony.
Mychal.
Hey, Ebony, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Ebony. I'm super happy to be here to talk to you again.
Awesome. Well, we've got a really hot topic today. We'll be talking about the guap, the moolah, the coin, right? I feel like I need Cardi B playing in the background. But a question that I often see come up is just about astrologers charging for their services. And this is something that really comes up across different forms of divination, probably spirituality in general, and anything that falls under that umbrella. But the concept of should astrologers be getting paid for their services? So let's start there with, I guess, yes or no and why, and then we can go from there.
This is a great question, Ebony, and definitely 1,020%, yes, astrologers should be getting paid for their services. And it's a question that I think a lot of people who practice astrology have had to come up with within themselves. And like you said, it's not just astrology, it's across this broader spectrum of spiritual slash, I guess, mindfulness-based or even quote unquote mystical forms of self-help or mystical forms of counseling or consultation, which includes astrology, but it also includes energy work. It also includes things like tarot, and it also includes other forms of consultation that kind of fall out of the framework of a traditional Western counseling or coaching environment. And I think a big part of that is because we aren't taught culturally to respect the sacred as being a valid or a viable source of information by which to guide our lives. And because we aren't taught to respect that on a cultural level, when it comes to actually going to someone who represents that sort of work, it also seems like something where, why should we pay money for that? If this thing isn't respected within this nation that I live in, or if this thing isn't respected within this cultural paradigm that I find myself living in, then why should I actually pay money to someone else to render this advice? Because at some level within the Western psyche, we don't even acknowledge that it's a service being rendered. We think it's just us going to someone in the same way as we go to the magic 8-ball, or in the same way as we go to the gumball machine and get our fortune on a little scroll of paper. I don't think that people actually step into that space knowing that it is a consultation, or feeling naturally that it is a type of counseling, albeit complementary to a more traditional Western approach. I think people view it as just, oh, let me see what this person has to say, or let me see what advice this person has to give me, as opposed to, let me actually show up seriously within this work and go to this person to receive valuable information by which to guide my life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then for the astrologer who has now heard you say this and is excited that they'll feel comfortable charging, how do you suggest they navigate pricing their services?
I think that astrologers should charge in a way that is truthful. And I recently saw this thing going on online where there's this whole move for astrologers to increase their prices in general. But I think that the astrologer who's going to increase their price should really be truthful about what sort of value they're bringing to their work. And this is something that I talk to my students at Oraculos about extensively, about knowing where you are on the spectrum of charging a price, and also knowing whether or not your educational background justifies an increase in your price. And it's not just speaking about education in terms of you taking a certification course or in terms of you going to a conference, but those things do also contribute to your larger education. I think an astrologer who is going to consider not only charging for astrology, but also ultimately increasing the price of how much they charge for astrology should really sit down and say, what are the things I've done and what are the things I have consistently done well that constitutes an increase in my price? And one of those things is, what's your hit rate? In giving a chart reading, what is your average? How are you landing? Are you landing somewhere along the lines of 60% accuracy, or are you landing somewhere along the lines of 80% accuracy? Are you landing within the realm of 90% accuracy? And are you landing in any of these spaces consistently? Because I think that more than anything else that you may have done in your past as an educational background, that justifies the sort of price that you should be charging. So your hit rate is an important one. Another thing that's important is if you know that you've grown your bones strongly in astrology on a very solid basis, and you know that the education that you come from is sound, you also know that the astrology that you practice is thorough, it's bulletproof, and it's sound, and it's something that you can rely on because it's something that you are consistently showing up powerfully in. And your astrology is also something that's consistently showing up powerfully for you in terms of the information you're giving people. Then we need to start assessing, okay, what other things am I doing that causes me to demand $10 extra or $5 extra? So say, for example, your starting price is $90, 90 US dollars, and I'm speaking about US currency because both you and I are within US currency places. And say that you start with 90 US. And the reason why I'm saying 90 US is because traditionally speaking, astrologers and complementary therapists have always geared their prices based on the prices that massage therapists charge within their community. So shout out to you if you're a massage therapist, but massage therapists and also hairstylists have always kind of set the bar in terms of what an hour-long session should be. And so one, I would say check and see what your local massage therapist is charging. And if that price seems to you to be unethical because it is beyond the scope of your comfort, because you know that you aren't providing a service that's valued, that 150 or 190 or however much your local massage therapist is charging, then fine, modify or modulate your price based on that and set real checkpoints and markers until you get to that level. So if it is that you want to get to 120 and at the moment, you know that you're really comfortable charging $90, then what is the check point that constitutes you moving from 90 to 100? And what will be the next checkpoint that constitutes you moving from 100 to 110? And what will be the final checkpoint that constitutes you moving from 110 to 120? And those things should be things that represent a real amount of value that you find yourself increasing or that you find yourself adding to your practice. So for example, I've told you all as my students that after you've finished a particular level of in-class astrological training, every conference you attend should increase $5 on whatever price you're charging until you find yourself getting to the ultimate price that you want to charge. So if you attend a UAC and if you go to every single workshop in UAC, and at the end of that, you feel like, boy, I've really invested in my astrological training, therefore I can show up within my astrological practice in a greater way, then let me increase my price from $90 to $95 and let me cruise at that $95 level for 3 months, 6 months. and then set another checkpoint for myself of probably taking a seminar or probably taking another conference and letting that conference also represent another $5 increase. So now I'm not charging 90, but I'm charging 100. And let me operate and let me grow my bones at that $100 level for another 6 months before I navigate what it means to increase my price yet again. If you take a direct certification, and knowing that a certification represents a more structured form of education than just attending a conference, then maybe you say to yourself, okay, at the end of this certification that I'm adding onto my currently rigorous astrological practice, I will also add $10 onto whatever price I charge, because the certification costed me X amount of dollars, but it also took 3 months of my life, 4 months of my life to complete. So I deserve to increase my price by $10 just by virtue of successfully showing up every single day to the classes that the certification entailed, and also successfully passing the certification in a way that I'm proud of. And then increase your price by $10 because a certification is probably twice the amount of purposeful effort than just showing up and being a conference attendee. And I think that if we grow in those ways, and if we give ourselves time to rest at a particular price for 3 months to 6 months, and really force and demand ourselves that we increase the quality of our astrology to the point where the quality of our astrology is consistently meeting that financial price that we're charging our clients for, then we can really grow a practice that we're not only proud of, but we can also grow a practice where we know that we aren't just arbitrarily raising our prices to keep up with the competition, but we're raising our prices because it actively represents an increase in the value that we offer. And insofar as astrologers aren't increasing the value that they offer their clients, I think it's really unethical for astrologers to charge prices that aren't actually falling within the scope of the reality of their skill set. Your prices reflect a particular skill set that you have. Another thing with prices is that your prices also reflect accessibility. And this becomes a much deeper conversation. And it's something that I've spoken to a good friend of mine, Judith Hill, about charging prices that allow astrology to be accessible for people in general. And a good astrologer is an astrologer who is at least open to the prospect of having a lot of clients and open to the prospect of having a diverse range of clients, not just clients who can afford a $600 reading. And I think that when we charge $600 for a reading, it sets us up to only have a particular sort of client who probably also falls within a particular sort of socioeconomic background. Because if someone can afford to pay $600 for 1 hour, then that person probably is falling on a particular level of society where their other friends can also afford to pay $600 for that hour. And for me personally, I don't just want to give readings to people who can afford the $600 an hour price. I want to charge a price that allows me to read for everyone. Because yes, when I look around and I see the prices that other younger astrologers who haven't been practicing as long as I've been practicing are charging, I'm like, oh wow, I really should increase my prices. But at the same time, there's a part of me that says, how high can I increase my prices and still be able to give readings to everyone? And I acknowledge that the price that I currently charge may not necessarily be accessible for everyone, but I also acknowledge that I would feel uncomfortable charging the $350 that I see much younger astrologers who don't have the background that I have charging, because it would prevent that much more people from coming to me and receiving consultations. And fundamental to my everything is that I'm a practicing astrologer. and I need to practice. I'm not just going to sit down and make Instagram posts all day, or make posts on Twitter all day, or teach all day, because what are you teaching if you're not practicing? So I need to practice, and therefore the price I charge is a price that allows me to stay constantly practicing astrology, because every reading I give allows me to be in astrology school. And that's more important to me than making my fortune from giving one reading a month.
Oh, that was a word. I do have a related question to that, just in terms of newer astrologers who haven't been practicing very long. How do you go from that step of learning astrology? You're always learning, but learning to the point where you feel comfortable giving a reading, and then moving to the place where you start charging for readings. And I see this question come up a lot.
This is a really complex question, Ebony, because not every astrologer is made equal. And while I could give a response based on my own students and say, hey, after you finished this course, and this course, then you are equipped to begin giving readings professionally. And after you give 40 hours of practicum readings, then you are equipped to give a reading professionally, and then you are equipped to enter professional practice. Like, that's the standard for me. The standard for me is that you have to study 3 courses: the Foundations of Classical Astrology, Practice of Concrete Astrology 1, and then go on a 4-month, 40-hour practicum in which you're giving 40 hours of readings to people. That's essentially supervised. And then you move into saying, hey, here's a piece of paper that says that as far as I'm concerned, I trust the astrology that you're practicing, even though I know that your education will continue onward into the more advanced levels of training that we offer at Oraculos. So I've built and structured our programming in such a way whereas the steps that it takes to move into professional practice are clear-cut. Now, for the astrologer who doesn't have that sort of environment, or that sort of handcrafting, or that sort of molding from a mentor, who is just studying by themselves, I would say that that astrologer first has to know, what is my lineage of astrology? Because there's nothing wrong with being self-trained, but you have to know what it is you're studying. And by lineage, I don't just mean you're studying astrology. I mean, what is the specific school of astrology you're studying? What is the specific system of astrology you're studying? What is the specific branch of astrology you're studying? And who are some of the figureheads within that? Who are some of the leaders within that field? Who are some of your astrological ancestors? Because you need to know the type of astrology that you're practicing, and you need to know that everything you're studying is contributing to that type of astrology that you're practicing. And after you have given yourself what is hopefully a rigorous self-training that's based on the actual applied practice of real tangible astrology with real tangible clients, then I'd say you're in a position where you're ready to begin charging for readings. So, and I'm just making this up at this point, but I'd say if you've given yourself a year of rigorous, intensive, daily astrological study and work, and you have curated for yourself a specific curriculum of practice and a specific approach of practice that you can dedicate yourself to daily over the course of a year, and you set aside your hours each day that goes into both the study and the practice of what you're studying, then after that year, I would say that you are equipped to begin giving yourself a practicum. And that practicum can be, I give 10 full readings. I would prefer if it were 20, that you give yourself 20 full readings where you work. You do your 2 hours of preparation before each chart, and then you give your 1 hour reading. And then you have your 15 minutes of feedback from that client afterwards. And then you go and you journal what that client said, and you go and you review the reading that you gave and listen to some of the things that you said, and really put yourself under the microscope for 20 clients. And I can't do math. So that would be 3 hours. That would be 3 hours per client times 20. I'm going to go and calculate that. I'm going to cut this out. So that was, I was going to say, let me go calculate that, and I'm just cut this out of the recording. But so yeah, you give yourself a 60-hour practicum, and if you can do it in that sort of rigorous way, by the end of that 20th client, you will be prepared to begin charging for your readings. What you begin charging, that's between you, yourself, the four walls, and Jesus. But you will be at a level where you are prepared to begin charging money. And truthfully, at this point, I think that no astrologer who is worth their weight in gold, even if you're a beginner astrologer, I think no astrologer should be charging $1 per minute. So I'm completely against the concept of astrologers charging $60 for a reading. So at the minimum, I think an entry fee for an entry-level neophyte astrologer should be $75. If you've done your year of training, that is as rigorous as I've just described. And if you've given yourself an independent practicum, that's as rigorous as I've just described. Another thing that can be useful is to pay a professional astrologer to listen to you give a reading. I have people do that all the time. And I think that that's a really valid thing. That's something that I've done with my mentors. I've paid them for sessions for them to just sit down and listen to me give a reading. They give me a chart to read, and I read that chart on the spot. And I get their assessment and I get their feedback. And that has made me into a much stronger astrologer today. So there are all of these tiny things that you can do, but I think that you should give yourself actual, tangible, and real checkpoints. Don't just throw up a website and say that you're an astrologer if you have no practice behind you, because this is a field and you do this entire field a great disservice when you know nothing. And I'm very much against astrologers knowing nothing and calling themselves astrologers, because astrology isn't a nothing field. You need to know something, and you actively need to know more than something. And I think I've just described a shape of what more than something could look like, but do not be a nothing astrologer, because you don't just serve as an embarrassment to yourself when you're a nothing astrologer, but you embarrass all of us who are actually out here trying to elevate the quality of the practice of astrology that we practice, but also elevate the quality of astrologer that we release into the world from a teaching perspective.
All right. Well, that was some very useful advice and great guidelines for people who are just coming into the field. And some of us need those guidelines and, structures to help us figure things out. So thanks on behalf of those people. All right. And I don't know how I feel about the nothing astrologers, because I feel like you attacked the old me. That was one of them. Hopefully I've redeemed myself over the years.
You redeemed yourself thoroughly, Eboni. You most definitely have.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this conversation, Mychal. I'm sure this is going to be very useful for folks. Tell me about upcoming events at Oraculos. What's going on?
Eboni, I'm super excited to share with everyone all of the upcoming events that we have at Oraculos. First of all, we have our OSA open house, which is where you can come and find out all about the amazing educational opportunities that we have for you to further enrich your own mystical and astrological practice. So whether you want to study the Foundations of Classical Astrology, or if you want to find out about our other upcoming programs, then join us this coming Saturday, September 11th for our Oraculos open house. Also, later in the day on Saturday, September 11th at 1:30 p.m. will be the launch of our Foundations of Classical Astrology program. And the Foundations of Classical Astrology program is where you, as an astrologer, learn all of the things that you need to not only deepen your understandings of the roots of classical astrology, but also deepen your ability to practice classical astrology in a concrete way. So if you want to sign up for FOCA, which is the Foundations of Classical Astrology program, you still have time to do so. Please go over to our website at oraculosastrology.com, click on our programs page, and sign up for the Foundations of Classical Astrology program today. Also, if you want to find out more about whether or not FOCA is a right fit for you, please come on down and join us at our Oraculos open house. It's absolutely free of charge, and you can go over and register for it on our website at www.oraculosastrology.com/events. We completely look forward to seeing all of you there, and I can assure you that you'll have an amazing time with your Oraculos family.
Thanks, Mychal. We look forward to the open house, and thank you all for joining.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eboni. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Juicy conversation you got going over here. People are going to be so mad.